Hello, this is Bharat, and this is the ninth video in the series on some areas of preparation for the exam UGC NET Assistant Professorship. And today we are going to have a brief look at the area of metaphor. So, metaphor is something that you've been going through ever since you attended school. It's nothing that you don't know about. It's nothing that you don't know, don't go through on a daily basis. Again, I don't want to talk about the brain and how it processes it and those things, because talking about the brain, you have to have very, very rigorous training, very rigorous studying for a long amount of time, and it's one of the hardest subjects even in medical sciences. So, we'll look at metaphor from the point of view of an outsider, as in a non-expert. I wouldn't pretend to be an expert because I can start talking about this kind of thing. India rankings penalized retractions for the first time. That's September 2025, so not long ago. And that is one of the key debates that you have in research going on today. And this has to do with a lot of mathematics and statistics. Statistics came in popular use because that's a bit contradictory. That's a bit funny because among the research community experts, let's say, because of machines, chips, electronics. That's so. Anyway, you need to know these things because you will have to deal with this on a regular basis. You will have to have papers, and you'll have to have submissions and research, and that's what this exam is about, by the way. UGC NET Assistant Professorship is about, and so on. So ISC ranked 59 by the THE, but its credibility is unmatched. So this is the kind of thing we are talking about, and again, we are talking about Western, Eastern, Occidental, Oriental, and it gets to things what I've been trying to avoid speaking on. So last time, for example, I said I wouldn't be talking about, or I said, in fact, this was the part I was talking about when I talked about appropriation. So the idea would be that you have an axis which divides the debate. So on which side are you? It'll be like that, and that's why I don't want to get into this. So appropriation, okay. If it's about copyright, okay, you're saying that this is not. So whose right does English the language, or does a language so enjoy kind of, or you see my point, who does a language belong to? Who can come up with near versions of the same of a language, and so on. So one of the things that I've been saying is, I read, for example, curiosity among people for AI statistics. Thing is the curiosity coming from people, or is it being forced out of people, or imposed upon people? That is the kind of thing you'd talk about. So I was talking about, I researched open systems arguments against open systems, and I came across bipartisan Center for Policy Research. I think that's America, by the way. Bias in AI systems, the open or closed AI dilemma, and this is probably related to, I've come across this think tank again, CSIS. So you should know about these things, and this is what's going on in the world. By the way, that's current affairs again, as I've been saying. So open or closed AI dilemma. It would be a good read. I would suggest this. Again, when we talk about appropriation and such things, we are looking at these ideas. So that's why non-expert first look at entry point at to start studying the concept. Let's go. Concept of metaphor. Now, metaphor is language. I would go to the extreme and say metaphor is or language is metaphor. What do you say? What say? All languages metaphor is one of my favorite. Okay, someone said it. Someone said it. Again, you come across these things. It's like it's there's a particular expression for this: serendipity. Serendipity. And then there is. I read it in James Joyce. This is in relation to James Joyce, or in James Joyce. There is epiphany. Epiphany, right? So the kind of thing. All so you come across and kind of the Yahoo. Or the thing is, it's not just you who's thinking about these things, and if you find it today, the issues become one of, I mean, increasingly become one of whose copyright it will be. I mean, again, you can't come up with lines and say they are my copyright, and then that's where you have publications, and that's where you have the problem of retractions, and then you're talking about intellectual property and who dominates the global scene. That's where we start talking about the West versus the rest and so on. By the way, there's a book, The West versus and the Rest, I think. Ferguson. So it's a separate topic. I do not want to get into it, but lots to read there. So PHE rankings and Indian universities. That's one of the things that you need to look at, because I read there has been boycott, IITs, IST, something like that. So that's certainly a topic you need to know about. And this is very much going to affect you as an individual, because you're preparing for things like UPSC and UGC NET, and even state public service commission examinations and other such examinations. In any case, you have to know these things, because the higher education is certainly something that everyone must know about, especially given what the developments have been in recent decades. And how should I put it? Higher education institutions, and it's catching up with the industry as regards development of. I have had people talking about it. I've listened to people talking about it, and that's what the issues look like. And use of AI throughout use of AI, I've already mentioned that companies are being fined, and there are legal suits and so many things. So coming back to this, we'll look at from a non-expert entry point, and we'll talk about what metaphors is. So metaphor, you read about metaphors and similes in school, must have been very early. I have had metaphors and similes for so long, and similes, and I would like to start with. That's where they start with. That's what they start with. Definition, metaphor definition, figure of speech, and so on. Okay, the thing is, if you look at something like this is just UX UI, user interface, user interaction for something coming from a database, and the databases are these dictionaries and encyclopedias and so on. I've already mentioned that there are so many editions of Britannica Encyclopedia in the public domain. So metaphor from so many dictionaries. Again, if you want to find out about how these things actually are carried out, you want to be looking at a time when there was no computers, where there were when there were no connected computer systems. So you're looking before, I guess, first computers in UK universities or US universities, or first computers in, I think it was Berkeley, and it was Unix. It was computers. That's history of the internet. So it was a defense project, of course, and I think Unix developed at by, yeah, that name reminds me. Yeah, this one. I've had the fortune of having gone through this book. So anyway, Unix. You do come across these things when you're studying subjects like electronics, computer science, and so on. Even computer applications. Depends on how you're studying, what your interests are, and so forth. I've talked about so many things, but not about metaphors. So you start with definitions from from the centuries. Centuries. I'll take up a very specific. Yeah. My apologies. I'll take up a very specific example. Example is metaphor in Shakespeare. Metaphor in Elizabethan works. Metaphor in Seneca, and so on. Metaphor in Latin authors. Ancient Greek authors, and I'm talking about ancient Latin authors again. So the use of the term metaphor in Latin, guys, this is about how it was. So handbook of rhetoric and things like that. So if you look at the university websites, if you look at people have been so what I've known is, and this is privy to. Andrew Artony. Metaphor. That's one book. Andrew Artony, Metaphor and Thought, and it's edited by this academic professor. I don't know the details, but yes, it's from America. So point being, that's one. I just want to talk about metaphor in the Mahabharata. So I was having this conversation with someone some time ago, years ago, and this person remarked that it's metaphorical. Thing is, you come back to some like Language is metaphor. Okay, so that is the area, and you start by looking at such things. Cognitive. That's what I'm saying. Cognitive. It's cognitive. A course in cognitive linguistics. Metaphor. Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm saying. It's. I would suggest read appropriation. I would suggest you to spend time on appropriation instead. I mean, cognitive linguistics. It's surely there, and I would study the brain instead. Just the brain, because that's one thing that's a prerequisite. And if you're talking about you are your brain, aren't you using a metaphor? The thing is, telling such a thing, or talking about such a thing, to people, um, neurocentric phase. That the phrase. That's what AI has to say about it. I did not ask AI anything, but metaphors and your brain, metaphor. So many things on it. Point is, there's a lot going on in the name of research along these lines, and the thing is, if you tell people not to use the metaphorical language, if you're talking about science, people won't like it. So I've already talked about things like psychology versus science and so on. So point being, you have to take care of that. Language is metaphor. Why am I discussing metaphor? Why am I talking about why do we have all of this here today? Thing is, metaphor is key to, for example, reading comprehension, and critical thinking, and those areas. And so you're talking about poems, and so what oft was thought but never so well expressed. That's again Alexander Pope. So there's this question whether mathematics is invented or discovered and things like that. And there's all of this is from philosophy, by the way. The only subject you have to read is philosophy. That's the one. I mean, subject you have to spend your time on. Again, what do you read from philosophy? The other day we looked at graph of philosophers, network, graph network. Was it this one? Yes. It's a medium site, but yeah, find out more about this. I'm not going to do that, but what do you read in philosophy? That would be the question. And do you read particular topics? For you, for example, if you talk about books such as those that focus on a particular concept, you don't want to do that unless you want to specialize in philosophy, and unless you're kind of doing your um, PhD in philosophy. Okay, you don't do that. You read from a wide variety of sources, wide variety of subjects covered within philosophy. So philosophy of the mind, philosophy of language, so many things. Philosophy of language, so on and so forth. So much there to find out about. Which will which of these will you read? So you could talk about, again, I would point you to these things because ultimately it's rephrasing, and metaphors, right? So the other day, magic of consciousness or something like that, we came across that and it said that this is okay for it's written for the general public and so on. So that's what you're looking at, and see, AI will explain anything. So the point is, this paper that I pointed you to, we reject AI for qualitative, reflective research, or whichever it is, paper. Okay. Yeah, that's the issue there. Okay. So it says clearly that paper, it's somewhere in the paper it says that it cannot deal with meaning, it cannot create meaning, and so on. That's what I've been saying for so long. I've been telling you that this is putting stuff from databases and knowledge bases, and meaning is attached to, and this gets, again, read political theory or political science and so on, and philosophy, right? So which subjects in philosophy will you read? What are the spelling is? Okay, let's not waste time on my typing skills, or how much I'm dedicated to presentation. I'm actually screen recording, and I'm not even thinking about video recording parts of the aspects of the whole thing. So languages metaphor is not, it's something that you will come to as a conclusion, even on your own. You don't need me or anyone else. But then there's the question of, okay, if you're working in a time bound manner, you have to be able to, yeah, you don't have to think something for yourself. And at the same time, I must tell you that mathematics courses require you to proofs learn writing proofs, and there is induction. So that's in CRT. Yes, so that's school, right? School. So mathematics courses, depends on what course it is, what level it is. So if you're doing BSc mathematics syllabus, if that's what you look at, you'll come across this. There's It doesn't matter where it is coming from. There'll be, you can just simply aggregate these things, and that's what your statistical machines do, and that's where this is coming from. You can aggregate these things from the best universities you want these things from, and it doesn't matter these ultimately it's a separate issue, and it's best I keep my thoughts to myself as regard these matters, at least for the time being. So you're talking about, for example, this is something that you should know. So fighter planes shot down mathematics paper. So ultimately it results from research and development. All of this comes from need as arises in, for example, medical situations, and military scenarios, and so on. And I've been talking about language as it is learned by army personnel and so on. There's a paper, yes, Wald. This is the paper, Wald. Okay. So the idea is when you do, that's a very good thing that struck me. That's what I'd like to share with you. And I'll be talking about metaphors a lot, really a lot, because Shakespeare metaphor is one of the best things you could think of. That's what writing, that's what poetry is. and then they take it to from a line, from a phrase, a clause. They take it to an entire text, and you have formal structuralism, so on, so forth. So much metaphor about metaphor, right? So the idea is that math proofs immediately drive the idea home. You create meaning when you go about a proof. So, for example, let x be bound and finite, or let x belong to the set. That's how you start mathematical proofs. And again, this is very much a part of my education right from school time, because I had those subjects then, and then I had discrete mathematics. That's what you have in computer science, automata theory. That's staple. That's essential requirements. Okay. I had some subjects because I had electronics, and if you want to know what this is about, you can find out more about hardware programming. 808, for example, that's microcontroller. 8086 is microprocessor. That's Intel. Intel. There is difference between these things, and whatever subject you look at, no matter what you're looking at, you are talking about concepts in metaphoric language. You can't do it another way. And English, irrespective of the other things that can be said, English is polysemous because that is efficient in terms of because one to many mapping is efficient in terms of providing, or in terms of reducing memory usage. For example, German and Sanskrit, they are difficult because you have to. Again, what's difficult is subject to how much you've been doing it and how long you've been doing it for, and so many other things. It's about the brain, lots of things there. It's about your inertia. That's what I've said. 7 languages in 7 weeks, programming languages, right? So German, Sanskrit, they're difficult, or they seem difficult, whatever it is. It's a lot about so many things that I would not get into, but the cultural factor is also there. I've already said that there are things about English as the world's language, again, world Englishes, and it's getting into those. I don't want to get into the West, into the rest, and then Occidental, Oriental, and so many things. I want to limit myself to polysemy. So polysemy is related to polysemy. Many meanings, having many meanings, is connected with the idea of metaphor, because the metaphor is how you achieve polysemy. Metaphor is how you achieve. You meaning who, whose, where. I keep asking this question. Metaphor is how you achieve polysemy. So with this, I would like to conclude for today, because I'm not able to give more time. I'll probably record another half an hour video continuing this one, maybe, and we'll keep talking about metaphor anyway. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.